Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, liability and legato. When the police forcibly entered 43-year-old Paulina Fiore's apartment, they found her lifeless body on the floor of the kitchen, covered in mysterious bruises. The lead detective immediately suspected homicide and ordered an autopsy. But after extensive analysis, the coroner concluded the cause of death was vitamin C deficiency. In a video appearing on social media, Stephanie Brolo, who sources confirm is a close friend of Paulina, is seen weeping and uttering, "This is all my fault." At the offices of my city's largest newspaper, I sip my third espresso of the morning and finish writing the story. One coffee per story is a good rule to live by. I wish I could teach this to new journalists, but they have their own ways of doing things. After I finish my third random fatality write-up of the morning, I announce, I'm sick of tabloid journalism, to the newsroom, to no one in particular. The young writers around me ignore me. In the economic downturn in traditional media, they are happy to simply hold a job. Giuseppe, our new chief editor, says articles with a topic of either sex or death receive 10 times more clicks than any other. The editorial concepts in his head are as blunt as the sales method of a fish seller in the market. I need to endure another month of ambulance chasing until I can focus on another piece of investigative journalism. My lengthy expose of government corruption last month, which filled half the front page of the print edition, received fewer views online than a weekend car crash or a nightclub brawl. Max? Giuseppe is standing in front of my desk. Why haven't you interviewed the friend yet? Friend? Friend of whom? Idiot. The "it's all my fault" friend. Young, attractive, trending online. Giuseppe says this with his voice rising in volume for each word. Stephanie Brolo. I show Giuseppe my memory, for detail is flawless. I didn't study political science to chase after friends of murder victims and suicides. Do it. He turns around and stomps off. Halfway across the newsroom, he turns back and shouts, Vitamin C. Focus on the vitamin C. Nutrition stories are good for our advertisers, Max. Several reporters type notes into their mobiles. Even an untrained eye can foresee them proposing all types of vitamin stories in tomorrow's news meeting. I dial the friend. This is Max Serafino. Is this Bianca? Yes, a female voice says, and hesitates. Are you with the police? Number I'm with the... I say the name of the newspaper. With a 137-year history, the name often opens doors. I thought the police would be the first to call. What do you want? The police in Italy would never bother with something as trivial as a comment on social media, unless a politician or celebrity was involved. I'd like to clarify what you said in the viral video on Italia app. I mention Italy's largest social media app. That video is ruining my life, Bianca says. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, everyone misunderstood what I said. I didn't have anything to do with Paulina's death. She stopped going out and looked thinner 6 months ago. Maybe I started her in this direction. She catches her breath. I only called her twice after she stopped seeing me. I should have tried harder, gone to her home. Yes? It's all too much, she says. Thanks for calling me, but sorry. I don't know who you are. Abruptly, The mobile screen turns red. She disconnects the WhatsApp call and goes offline. Good work on the Paulina interview. Giuseppe reaches over and picks up one of my antique pencils and massages it between his fingers. No problem, boss. I managed to knit the meager information I was given into a piece about a heartbroken friend and a substantial essay about eating disorders. Nice pencil. He studies the Castelli wooden pencil quixotically. Max, you are 10 years too old for this newsroom, but you are a cat that always lands on its feet. The Tiger of Turin, I propose. I'll accept that as a byline. An important-sounding moniker is the best I can hope for these days. I recall the Elysian days of being flown to Rome to interview government ministers, back when traditional newspapers collected all the advertising revenue instead of Google. When assigned a story, one of the first duties a beat reporter checks off is to contact the family members. I locate Paulina's father on social media and send an introduction. This is Max Serafino, a reporter with the Turin Register. I'm writing an article about the unfortunate incident with your daughter and would like to ensure I have all details correct. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. I receive a reply, which appears to be copied and pasted. We have nothing to say. Do not contact us again. The Fiore family. I move on to another breaking story, and the Paulina story goes quiet in the newsroom of the Turin Register for several days. Max, line 7! Someone shouts. I answer, City desk, Max Serafino. This is Paulina Fiore's father, a man says. Our daughter. It's all our fault. We saw how much time she was spending on her mobile and never stopped her. I'm sure it's not your fault, but I would like to hear more, I say. Is there a reason you decided to call me today? The police unlocked her phone and asked us questions about the websites she was looking at. Do you remember any of the names? I don't know. I've never heard of any of them, he said. But most of the articles were about diseases. Was she in contact with anyone? They did say she received the links from friends on the Italia app. Judging by reports from neighbors, Paulina has not been outside for months. The friends must be online ones. I call Professor Rizzo at the University of Turin. Could fear about disease, viruses, and bacteria, and so on, cause a patient to suffer from malnutrition? I ask. Mysophobia, commonly called germophobia, can cause a patient to avoid touching food, to eat with gloves, that sort of thing. In problem cases, it may cause patients to limit social interaction and avoid public places. Paulina appeared to be living on a diet of boiled pasta. That sounds possible, but I've never heard of malnutrition even in the most extreme cases of mysophobia. Hunger, including a desire for a mixed diet, is stronger than almost any other psychological urge. But isn't the urge to survive even stronger? I conjecture, trying to imagine what the existential threat could be. How could Paulina completely avoid something so widespread as vitamin C? I update the chief editor on my progress on the case. This has the workings of a good human interest story. Food, fear, a female victim. Giuseppe looks satisfied. Keep digging, but steer clear from anything negative about Italia app. They deliver 30% of our incoming traffic. I am on speaking terms with many people in our city. People love to talk about themselves to someone who is actively listening, especially if they perceive them to be in a position of authority. After graduating university together, Bruno went on a different, more international path than I. Having worked for 15 years in Silicon Valley, he returned to our hometown and was soon snapped up by Italy's largest social media company. A glimpse at a life I could have lived. I cancel dinner with my girlfriend Gabriel to set up a cozy dinner with a 41-year-old man. On a clear, dry evening as dusk descends over Turin, as it sits in its valley between the towering Italian Alps on one side and the rolling hills that rise up from the Po River on the other, I walk toward the rectangular bulk of iron lattice that is the old Fiat factory in Lingotto on the south side of the city. The factory, almost a kilometer long, has transformed into offices and a ground floor shopping mall. Now it's popular with high-tech startups, many from America, France, and Germany. The building that was the epicenter of the city when Turin produced half the automobiles of Europe is now filled with people trying to figure out how to sell discount handbags through e-commerce. At least the people of Turin are no longer destined for a life of hard labor as previous generations were. Paulina lived not far from this building. At the Osteria del Fiat, I've asked for a quiet table. I'm disappointed when the host leads us to a very crowded dining room. We pass a large room with only one table of guests. In the circle of suited men, I recognize a retired local politician. In the dark recesses of the city, the power brokers don't like to be overheard. An hour later, after we have finished our own dinner, Bruno takes a large swig of the dolcetto d'alba we have been drinking. The obligatory pleasantries and the exchange of information about shared friends has been completed, and we can move on to the real meat of the dinner. I explain how Paulina had been accessing his employer's app over 50 times a day. At Italia app, we focus on returning traffic. Some readers we enchant with glamour, others we addict with fear. Isn't that manipulation? We are giving people what they want. If they want to hate, they will find it. If they want to love, they will find that too. What about promoting democracy and humanitarian values? That's just rhetoric for university students. You know that. Paulina Fiore died after gorging on fake news sent to her by Italia app. It's not our fault that someone can't handle online news. If we don't send it to them, someone else will. You have become very American in your thinking, I point out. It's disappointing my old friend can't see the world the same way we used to, but I've become resigned to accept people's differences, politically or otherwise. The police seem very interested in her social media history, I add. Bruno looks at me with renewed interest. Have the police opened an investigation? Maybe her death is not Italia app's fault. Maybe it's the people who write the fake news. If you can send me her browsing history, the one the police are going through, I'll take a look and put some spotlight on the fake news producers. That might keep you one step ahead in reacting to negative coverage. I'll keep your name out of it, of course. I'll think about it. Bruno focuses on his red wine glass. Bruno and I may not see eye to eye, but we have enough shared history to trust we will protect each other's best interests. The next afternoon, I receive Paulina's browsing history via an encrypted messaging app. I start clicking through the links. Italy's continuing flood of illegal immigrants. How COVID rises up through ventilation shafts. The 7 ways elevator buttons spread. Disease. Paparazzi capture pictures of Italy's first monkeypox patient. Vegetables in our supermarkets picked by immigrants inundated with monkeypox virus. I scan through months of links about deadly diseases and ways to avoid them. Fake news is a problem, and the government has been trying to combat it. In the thousands of links I scan through, my heart flutters as I spot our name. Don't trust what the government says about monkeypox. See attached articles from the Turin Register. Clicking the link, I see a list of familiar headlines. The dark hand behind the government reshuffle. Max Serafino. Patient malpractice allegations covered up by health authorities. Max Serafino. Pandemic Recommendations. Misguided. Max Serafino. Corruption Exposed in Turin Government. Max Serafino. Other articles Paulina was reading, those not to trust doctors and government health advice, often linked to articles written by me and my colleagues. I stare at the pencil that sits on my desk where Giuseppe left it earlier. Behind me, I hear someone approach and feel their hands on my shoulders. Giuseppe's voice says, "And you thought you were superior to all of us, didn't you?" Is it all? I am about to ask an obvious question, but stop myself. I have bills to pay and a scarcity of other work alternatives. I sweep pointless self-doubt from my mind. Journalists report the news. We do not generate it. With a click of the mouse, I bring up today's police bulletin and make proposals on which events we might cover for our prestigious 137-year-old newspaper to the chief editor. The next morning, a young journalist who normally sits beside me struts triumphantly through the newsroom greeting colleagues. Giuseppe gives him a thumbs up. I open the Turin Register's most viewed list, an online article. Clickbait news causes scurvy in Italy's auto capital is trending across the nation. I begin having regular dinners with Bruno. We talk about our old adventures in school and about the state of the country. Bruno reminds me that a political science professor in university had taught us, every industry is selling a product, and at its core, the news industry sells fear. In the coming months, the number of cases of malnutrition, similar to Paulina's snowball across the nation. I notice Bruno starts to eat more and more. I have lost my appetite. Just ask for mercy. It's a tricky section of the garden, shaded and north-facing, but the foliage thrives under my watchful eye. I ensure it grows lush and verdant, and only I can coax it from sulking in this hot, dry weather. I'm pleased to see the blue-green tones of Siboldiana flourishing beside the golden variegated undulates leaves. I'm outraged by the pockmarked damage I've discovered and search for the culprit amongst the ovate leaves. There, a snail clings to the underside of a leaf, sucked close in a non-consensual and greedy kiss. I prise it off, and the shell implodes in my pincer grip, crushed mush oozing between my fingertips. I discard the muck onto the soil with disdain, satisfied that feeder has now become food. A gardener must be brutal, constantly battling soft-bodied grubs, mandible-fanged pests, plagues of aphids and creeping insidious blight, all in order to protect the precious shoots and trembling new leaves. She must also have a hard, calculating heart to destroy what was previously nurtured, cutting back and curbing life when the time comes, sacrificing what was once so carefully created. I, the gardener, am like God. Through me, nature flows, giving vigor to the strong and enabling the weak and damaged to pass. Inside the house, the landline telephone clamors, taking 7 rings for Mrs. Nolan to stir from her armchair, doze and mobilize her arthritic joints to answer it. Crouched here beneath the open kitchen window, I am perfectly placed to eavesdrop what she says. "Hello, this is Miriam." "Oh, I'm as well as can be expected. And you?" "Yes, a very hot spell. The garden's very thirsty." "Oh, really? You're too kind. Honestly, it's too much." "It's an absolute honor. I can't quite take it all in. Trevor would have been so pleased, so very, very pleased." "Thank you ever so much. It's all such a surprise." "I certainly will, and you too. Cheerio." The telephone pings as it's replaced in its cradle, and I sense Mrs. Nolan shuffling along to the back door to find me. I muse over the emotional wobble I overheard in her voice. She's been prone to tears since Mr. Nolan's unfortunate accident, and numerous well-meaning villagers have phoned to offer comfort. But this call was a curious one, and I'm keen to be enlightened. Mercy, are you there? Right over here, Mrs. Nolan. I sound as sweet as maple syrup. Mrs. Nolan emerges from the side of the house, blinking in the bright sunshine, taking a moment to locate me by the shadowy border. I've had the most remarkable news, Mercy. The village committee have nominated me for the Best Blooming Garden Award. How kind of them. I'm sure it's Trevor's dahlias that persuaded the judges. He took such meticulous care of them. Trevor deserved the nomination, not me. He'd have been so proud, but it's too late. Both Mrs. Nolan and I glance involuntarily to the place on the lawn where Mr. Nolan was found. I am pleasantly surprised to notice how prolifically the daisies are growing. They're clearly thriving from minerals in Mr. Nolan's blood. Here we go. Mrs. Nolan's eyes are welling up, and her chin is wobbling. I stand, knit my eyebrows together with a show of concern, and gently usher her back indoors to put the kettle on. That's when I know there is no hope left for Mrs. Nolan. A well-meaning nomination, probably from sympathy votes, has exacerbated her misery and reduced her to convulsive weeping, proving any pleasure in life is now well beyond her grasp. What particularly irks me is that the dahlias were mostly attended to by myself, at least ever since Mr. Nolan's stroke last year, and I've exclusively cared for them since his recent demise. The dahlias, the roses, those blousy, vulgar petunias that Mrs. Nolan chose, and I obediently bedded in. The nomination is all thanks to me. The world has no place for the old and feeble. In this very garden, right under our noses, nature uses all manner of macabre means to ensure order is kept. Pincers, stingers, poisons, parasites that eat their host slowly from within. Although violent, these acts are essentially a great kindness. A kindness Mrs. Nolan now deserves. Star. I ponder my options, whilst some impulsivity was involved with Mr. Nolan. This time I'll carefully consider my plan. Not to say last time wasn't efficient and effective. I'd taken great care that afternoon to prune the privet hedge to perfection. I was clearing away the cuttings, gloved as the sap can sting, whilst Mr. Nolan limped up and down, pedantically questioning some cross-branch irregularities he perceived in the shrubs. I pitied him, unable as he was to appreciate my work and no longer able to manage the shears himself with one useless arm. It was the least I could do to relieve him of his agitation once and for all. Stepping close, I plunged the points of the shears into his fleshy, cotton-shirted paunch, which gave little more resistance than a fish belly, and slid the blades upwards under his ribs. It was remarkably easy. This single moment of pain was all it took to free him from his frustrated, failing body. A poppy crimson stain blossomed under his spread fingers as he clutched his gut in a futile attempt to hold back the seeping blood. Before my eyes, his pallid face became slack-jawed with disbelief. He gurgled and spluttered, eyes bulging pleadingly, but there was nothing left to be said. As he staggered, I gently grasped him by the shoulders and guided him down to the ground face first, so the blade tips emerged through his back like fresh new shoots. It looked every bit the tragic accident, the clumsy fall of a foolish man carrying tools he couldn't handle when he should have left the work for the gardener. I removed the remaining cuttings under the pretense I'd left much earlier, and left him for Mrs. Nolan to find after she returned from the parish cake sale. Perhaps a similarly violent end for Mrs. Nolan would be fitting. I'm briefly excited by the thought of her pale wrists cut to scarlet ribbons by secateurs. Driven to suicide by grief, of course. I suspect the bleeding out could take some time, and given the neighbors' windows will be wide open in the summer heat, enabling them to hear her screams, maybe this is an unwise option. A fall on the patio? I think of Mrs. Nolan's head as the snail shell crushed between my fingers and wonder if one blow would be enough. Multiple blows would be inconsistent with a fall, raising suspicions that could compromise the innocent image I'm associated with throughout the village. I'm reluctant to take such risk. My eyes narrow thoughtfully as I scan the tapestry of summer-petaled foliage in the garden borders. Star Mrs. Nolan's made of Victoria sponge. She tells me it's to celebrate the Best Blooming Garden nomination, but I can see her tired old heart's not in it. Nevertheless, we're both playing along with her pointless charade while it lasts. "Do have a slice before you go," she urges me. "I'll wrap up an extra slice for you to take home." We're sat at her little kitchen table. I've taken Mr. Nolan's chair as I'm curious to see her reaction, but she doesn't comment. She's adored my company since he's been gone. Evidence of her lonely, pitiful existence. My heart swells to think that soon I'll have released her from her misery. "Won't you have any tea, Mercy?" She looks quizzically over the top of her cup at my untouched one. I'm enjoying the delicious cake, Mrs. Nolan. I'm certainly glowing with anticipation, not at the sickly slice on my plate, but to see beads of sweat break out on her forehead. Mrs. Nolan raises a hand, her heart, probably feeling some palpitations. "Mercy, you've been a rock over these last few weeks. I don't know how I would have coped without you," she tells me earnestly. A curious sensation passes through me, a brief flicker of guilt, possibly even doubt. After all, it's not too late, is it? I push the inconvenient emotions away. Remembering my role as gardener requires ruthless management of the weak and sickly. And I wait. It's all happening fast now. Panic creeps into Mrs. Nolan's face as her heart begins to gallop like wild horses. She gasps, reaches out a hand towards me, but knocks my plate of cake onto the floor. Both smash into pieces on the tiles. Digitalis perurea, a cottage garden favorite commonly known as the foxglove, is an excellent pollinator, adding height and structure to summer borders. It's also highly toxic. The foxgloves I propagated have been glorious this year, in my opinion, outshining the dahlias by far. From the unripe green seeds, I've ground a paste and steeped it in the tea that Mrs. Nolan's poured from the pot. Her cup stands empty on the table, white and fluted like the trumpet of a foxglove flower. I watch closely, and am certain Mrs. Nolan experiences minimal pain as her racing heart outruns itself, my face disappearing from her view as her vision blurs and darkens. At her age, no one will suspect a thing. Star, the village shop door tinkles as I enter, and I wait patiently while Janet serves a child buying sweets from one of the large jars on the shelf. I smile indulgently at the youngster who glances uneasily at me and takes a wary, wide sidestep around me as he leaves. So strange that children often sense their vulnerability better than their adult counterparts. "Mercy, how are you bearing up?" Janet is the picture of kind concern. "Such a blow to hear about Miriam. I heard you were there when she took poorly." "It was terrible," I murmur, eyes downcast. She'd never truly recovered from finding Mr. Nolan in such a state. It was the shock, wasn't it? And a broken heart. Maybe it's all for the best. Janet shudders before her bright demeanor returns. "What can I help you with?" "Could I pop a note in the window, please?" "To let people know I'm available for work." With Janet's permission, I take out from my bag the card I've carefully written my number on and slide it into one of the plastic sleeves hanging in the shop window. It's placed alongside local business cards and adverts for piano tuition and babysitting. In my neat, orderly cursive, I've written my number and a friendly message. I'm confident there will be a good response, especially as the Best Blooming Garden Award is still up for grabs. Does your garden need some love and care? Call now for experienced help. Just ask for mercy. The Dark Files of Lazarus, case number 13. Lazarus, the city built upon the ashes of Los Angeles, has irony in mounds as high as the carbon steel coins piling up in the newly formed vaults. Theo Baxton was the 13th child born into this city after its establishment. Blessed at birth, cursed at life. Again, the irony piles on. Superstitions aside, young Theo had the average childhood of those in the city. A busy father, a mother who stayed at home making a side business for her personal hobbies, schools located on the outskirts as a means to accommodate all from different walks of life, rival gangs that start between said schools and end up either inside of the city or inside the ground. Theo was no exception. He was branded to the Cater Kings, a gang that sought to make money between other gangs as an intermediate and peacekeeping family. Fees were issued to them to end turf wars before they started, a fair sum of carbon steel coins and fruit seeds that could also be traded in for food and weaponry. Young Theo was trained as the accountant of the group, having excelled in his classes of mathematics. In fact, given his devotion to the numbers, he was also allowed to freelance between the gangs. Word would spread throughout Lazarus of the boy genius with a fist in fights and a hand in banks, and he had his own office flat amongst the perks of a local celebrity. This climb would continue for 3 years until the peace was finally shattered. A Third World War was an ongoing rumor even in this decade, but the threat of such was a temptation that could no longer be ignored. The federal government, trying to keep its iron hand upon the nation's throat. At the same time, groups of states were seceding from the Union, starting with Texas and Florida. California was arguing its points to secede despite being government central for years. Tensions were high everywhere, and all it would take was one little push. According to an associate of Theo, who wished to remain anonymous, a letter with no return address and a waxed seal pressed with an emblem of a serpent eating its own tail. Inside, Theo told his associate that it was from someone named Enzo, asking for help to what was described as a complicated accounting error. Despite Theo's policy to only work with people within the city, the letter promised a large reward, $50 million in carbon steel, with an extra $5 million sent to him as an incentive. All he had to do was leave his answer outside of his door by the second day of receiving the letter. The answer was yes. On the fourth day, the associate stated that a large sum of carbon steel was made to Theo's personal vault. The bankers, however, refused to divulge information at the time according to their privacy policies, and insisted that since no amount of money was stolen or missing, that this was just another paycheck for Mr. Baxton. Come the afternoon, a large box was delivered to Theo's office containing paperwork and USBs pertaining to the error mentioned in the letter from Enzo. Theo did examinations and cross-examinations, contacted different businesses, and even got in touch with several tax collectors. Apparently, several different accounts belonging to key figures within the city gangs were seized, and the paperwork of each were sent to the wrong people in authority, all of which were dismissed under negligence. Now, no longer needing any trials, the figures could get their money back, but the public servants refused to be involved with the returns. Instead, Theo was contacted as a representative of the Cater Kings to oversee the return of the physical funds. The associate then told of what happened over the next few weeks. Delivery trucks containing wooden boxes of the promised funds were driven to the outskirts of Lazarus, where the gangs of the prominent figureheads awaited to take to the vaults, personally. The associate noted two things that were strange. All the truck drivers wore masks, and all the boxes were locked with their designated keys back at the vaults, awaiting in the hands and granted access only by the bank personnel. Still, the gangs were happy to have their money back, and they praised Theo and the Cater Kings as heroes. The associate refused to answer any more questions, as he had pled the fifth with great tremoring. He was excused and escorted back to his home. The rest of the case was a jigsaw of events relayed by the media that left Lazarus with blood in the streets, controversies and conspiracies, and many unanswered questions. Several stores and storage facilities of fruit seeds were set ablaze over a course of 9 days. A week later, large crowds were running at large around the streets, whilst throwing glass bottles and broken pieces of concrete at vehicles and buildings. Citizens were set in a panic as droves of gang members washed upon them like a furious flood. The local police had to team up with the city's firefighters to stem the flow of violence, but they were outnumbered and could only give way yard by yard. The hospitals were soon filled to capacity with victims of the assaults, several of which were fatal. What caused this outburst? It turned out that it had to do with a bounty of 10 million carbon steel coins for the capture of Theo Baxton, with double if caught alive. Apparently, one of the heads of the gangs issued the order not long after the delivery of the boxes to the banks. A call was made from the bank once the packages were opened, citing fraud via forgery and non-delivery of goods, followed by a plea for help against an all-out mob assault. The police noted that none of the perpetrators used any weapons outside of the bank's own supplies, from chairs to pens and even magazines, with hysterical employees reporting threats against the traitor, the embezzling rat, with maledictions attached. Theo himself was unable to be reached, for he was no longer in Lazarus. Another of his associates, before dying of his wounds in one of the hospitals mentioned earlier, only uttered this: "Had to get him out. He, not in the wrong, framed. Got him out to a friend. Gotta find Enzo." The assessment by the city's detectives were as followed. Theo was made aware of the goods inside of the containers, which turned out to be lead bars. He was made to lay low as the Cater Kings tried once more to keep the peace. The turmoil was spiraling off the rails, and the Kings were placed in the spotlight. The head of the Cater Kings, who also remains anonymous, promised the others that he would provide them with the guilty party members, i.e., he was going to offer Theo up as a sacrifice. Theo was made aware of this by one or more of his associates, official or on the outside yet on his payroll, and had to arrange for departure. Then came the arson, and that pushed everyone over the edge in desperation, especially with the bounty issued and made public despite the denial of the gang leaders giving such an outcry. Theo and company had to fight their way out of his flat and office to the getaway vehicle, which had to blow through pockets of people, as obtained from the records of different doctors overseeing patients who were all victims to the same speeding car that bowled them onto the streets. All good things must come to an end, and for a young man with a talent for numbers, it was almost curtains. About 900 people were admitted to the hospitals, with 88 losing their lives. Amongst the lost were 13 cops, 15 firefighters, 9 store owners, and a mixture of citizens and gang members. In the aftermath of one of the darkest moments of Lazarus, the questions still rebound about the roads and haunts. Who was Enzo? Who really sent the bounty, if not any of the gang leaders? Where was the money? Where is Theo Baxton? Until the young accountant is apprehended, no one knows. There is doubt that even he will know. Authorities are looking as far as the coastlines, but so are many a gang member, with the Cater Kings intent on making good of their promise. Once, a city of angels was promised. Now, a den of devils has been erected, and it calls out for nothing less than vengeance. Ice Driver. Zen Mirai nudged the right flight stick on his control unit, and the 15-ton asteroid chunk beneath his feet stopped rotating. A tap on the throttle, and the longitudinal thrusters pulsed, sending him and his payload towards the cargo rail, the 200-meter-long metal tube with dozens of meteor chunks harnessed to it. They had already caught a batch of about 90 tons of ice, and this would be the last of their haul on this shift. "Status check," said Daw Artego through the local shortwave. He was sitting safe on Gopher 7, the bullet-shaped rail runner that pulled the cargo rail, a tiny vessel, less a spaceship than a spaceboat. His voice sounded tinny in Zen's spacesuit. Even though Zen had done this 1,000 times, sweat beaded his brow. Any extravehicular activity was dangerous, especially driving a rock. You needed a feathered touch and patience. He remembered years ago a rookie named Cassie who had neither. Tired and bored, she thrust a rock too hard and wasn't paying attention. It rammed another one and damaged the cargo rail. That was bad enough, but she was caught between them and turned to paste. Add to that the fact the company cut corners to save pennies. He was still stuck using stone-aged, manually operated driving pylons, for example. Every shift, Daw would park their rail runner at a spot the survey team highlighted. Then Zen would have to suit up and jet over to a good rock. Next, he had to drill holes in it to insert the dozen 4-meter-long pylons, and then calibrate their thrusters, all by hand. Basically, his job was strapping jet engines to asteroids and then flying those asteroids close enough to the cargo rail so that he could harness them to it. After that, he got to disassemble everything, but at least from there on, the rail runner would pull their cargo. Legally, drivers weren't even supposed to actually ride the rocks, but it was the best way to react when something was inevitably misaligned. Endless room for error. "Just bringing her in," Zen said. On top of all that, Zen was stressed because they were smuggling a platinum asteroid with the ice. He pushed the rock gently forward and fired reverse thrusters when it was in place. It was darker than the ice chunks, and if anyone looked up close, they would easily see it was a different kind of rock. But nobody did visual inspections. The economics just didn't work out, and so they'd gotten away with smuggling 12 of these right under their boss's nose. Here's to lucky 13 and an early retirement. It took Zen another 2 hours of work to harness the rock to the cargo rail, and another 2 to disassemble the driving pylons. All the while, he hoped this was the last time they had to do this. He pictured his wealthy future, well away from the frozen hellscape that is ice mining in the Canner asteroid belt, and he wondered if that future included Leah. He both did, and did not, want her there. By the time he passed through Gopher 7's airlock, he was trembling from fatigue. Daw floated towards him in the ship's zero-G atmosphere and handed him a celebration margarita. It was a rubber ball with a nipple filled with cold water, fruit-flavored protein powder, and a dash of moonshine. "Any word from home?" asked Zen. "Nah," said Daw. "They quiet. Ain't confirmed the last 3 check-ins either." Check-ins were every 12 hours, so the ice hauler Coleridge, their ride, had been silent for nearly 2 days. Probably just interference from the belt. Daw's voice was confident, but he glanced to the side and frowned. The trip back to the Coleridge took them a day. All the while, comms remained quiet, and since Zen and Daw were at the end of a 2-week shift stuck with each other, they were fine being quiet too. They'd been driving a long time together, had learned each other's patterns, knew when to step up, when to step back. Friends were scarce in the belt. Zen decided he'd tell Leah. It was a risk, but they were good together and he trusted her. Maybe he'd propose and make it official. He was so tired of this life, an endless cycle of brutal, dangerous work and drugging himself stupid. Last time on leave, he went on a bender. He had vague memories of drunken partying with Eason, Leah's brother, memories of whoring and gambling, comforting memories of declaring he'd leave ice driving behind for good. And these declarations made the idea real, and uncomfortable memories that he might have let slip something about the platinum. But even if he did, nothing had come of it. And this was their last run. They were safe. They would make it. By the time they had visual contact with the collarage, a hemispherical head connected to a 6-kilometer-long tail, scores of asteroid rails protruding from it like the quills of a pine branch, they still hadn't heard anything on comms. Maybe their comms are down, Dow said. Maybe a rock hit something. It wasn't unheard of. The Canner Belt was relatively safe for a hostile work environment, but it did throw the occasional gift at you, and the Coleridge's point defense cannons weren't always positioned to slag it. Maybe, Zen said, but he felt cold spread through his guts. The other 9 Gophers were already docked with their last rails, which meant the other 9 crews were already done their last shifts. Daw took them in, navigating to Gopher Bay 7. Normally they'd detach their rail and hook it to the Coleridge's tail, but since this was their last shift this run, there was no point. To stave off boredom and unease, Zen played around with the cameras, examining the massive Coleridge and her cargo. The field of dull space ice was worth a small fortune. Ice rocks were the main way of getting water on most of the stations in the system. Not that anyone outside the investors saw a real cut of the profit. Then Zen spotted something and frowned. "Check out camera 9. Daw complied. "What is that? We got guests?" An unfamiliar ship was docked with the Coleridge, sleek, narrow, and not broadcasting any ID. Zen swallowed. "Maybe," he said. They looked at each other. "You don't think," Daw said. He didn't have to finish the thought. Government auditors were their constant worry. They were rare this far out on the Canor Belt, but an inspection based on a hot tip would explain the radio silence. "Nah, it's nothing," Zen said, faking confidence. Had he babbled to Eason about his platinum? Had someone overheard? Had someone tipped off the government about smugglers? "Maybe we should dump the cargo," Daw said. Zen turned to him. "What? How the hell will we explain that?" They couldn't run either. Gopher 7 depended on the Coleridge, and no doubt they'd been seen. It would be beyond suspicious if they tried to flee. Fine, Daw said. "We'll figure it out, or die trying." His response for pretty much any problem. "Worst case," Zen said, "we'll cut them in." Daw swallowed hard, and his lips drew tight, but he didn't say anything more and resumed docking. Nobody met them at the airlock, and they both let out breaths they didn't realize they were holding. No squad of Marines arresting them. No imperious auditor denouncing them for smuggling and treason and 1,000 other things. Of course, things never actually looked like the movies, but the imagination did things when you were stressed. But they didn't see any of their crewmates either. "Nobody's responding on local comms," Daw said as they floated through the 0G corridors. "Think they got everyone rounded up? Doing individual interrogations?" "Interrogations?" Zen said. "This isn't some cheesy cop drama." "Yeah, well, maybe we should get our story straight anyway." Zen hesitated. He hated how much sense that made. Yeah, fine. As they floated towards the command module, they began hashing out their story, each regretting they waited this long for the idea to occur to them. The unbelievable possibility that they were going to get caught was becoming more real with each heartbeat. When they came to a T-juncture in the corridor, they finally came upon some other people. 3 men floating towards them with purpose. Both groups of men startled and stopped, grabbing the railings that ran alongside each corridor to enable movement in 0G. When Zen saw the men were armed, he felt a jolt of panic. They were Marines, but then he saw their faces. 2 of them were vaguely familiar, people he'd seen somewhere once upon a time. The third, Eason? It was the only word he managed before the others raised their weapons and started shooting. A hail of pneumatic slivers tore into Daw, thrusting him backwards down the corridor and leaving trails of globular blood hanging in the air. He didn't even get a scream out as a sliver punctured his throat. Animal panic gripped Zen, and he pushed off Daw, flinging himself back the way he had come. "I got them!" Ison's voice shouted behind him. "Corridor 9B, 1 runner." Not police then. Pirates. Zen grabbed the railings and propelled himself faster and faster, attaining a skull-cracking velocity. Behind him, he saw the 3 men spill into his corridor and fire. Ahead of him, he saw the juncture that would take him back to Gopher 7. When he neared the juncture, he grabbed the nearest railing with the aptitude only a career spacer developed, and he wrenched himself into it. He strangled a scream as something in his left shoulder tore. Not because he was hit by their fire, but because human shoulders just weren't designed for swinging a body at such speeds. His grip faltered, and he bounced down the corridor towards the airlock, rolling to avoid more injuries. Each bounce was a new bruise and a new opportunity to slow himself down and steer. He screamed out the voice command for the airlock to open. His pursuers were slower. By the time they rounded the corner and fired again, Zen sailed into the airlock. The razor slivers sliced through his right side and thigh, his blood blossoming in the air. He slammed the door shut before the next volley came. The pneumatic weapons were ideal for tearing through clothes and flesh, but were too weak to do any structural damage to ships, the perfect weapons for safely murdering in space. Their slivers bounced off the airlock door. Zen's right side was on fire, and his body and face were covered in his own blood, which was clouding in the air. "Come on, come on!" he shouted, starting the cycling process. Something thudded behind him, and he saw Ison's face through the airlock glass. He was snarling and banging on the door, probably saying something inane like, "Open the door." "Fat fucking chance," Zen muttered. When the airlock cycled and the door to the Gopher 7 opened, he floated through, holding his side. He hoped he wouldn't need stitches, but he feared he did. Either way, it would have to wait. It was just a matter of time for the pirates to breach the airlock. He floated into the pilot's seat, Daw's seat, and shotgunned through undocking. Something shuddered, and he heard the deep wail of metal bending and breaking. He was licensed to fly, but as a backup for Daw, he rarely did, and probably forgot something. The checklists didn't cover fleeing from pirates anyway. Regardless, Gopher 7 didn't report any critical errors. Good enough. He lit up the thrusters and put some distance between himself and the Coleridge. But where would he go? He could outrun the Coleridge, and he had a head start on the other Gophers. But Ison's ship was a real starship, not a glorified cargo truck. He decided to dive into the canner belt itself, banking on Ison's pilot not being familiar with flying through rocks, banking on being familiar enough himself. Then an alarm trilled and his console flashed red. It was the friendly fire warning, in case the Coleridge ever accidentally aimed its point defense cannons at one of the gophers. Only this time, it wasn't accidental. "Shit," Zen said. The whole ship rocked as the slugs tore through it, and he was knocked out when he hit his head. Zen's first thoughts were about making sure Daw was fine. Concussions were serious, and this wasn't just professional diligence. Daw was his friend. It took him a while to extricate himself from his seat, and by then he remembered that Daw wasn't there, that he saw Daw get murdered. Zen ran his hands over his face. "Shit," he whispered. Daw was dead. He felt cold inside, and he didn't really know why. This line of work claimed people all the time. A ship like the Coleridge might have upwards of 10 fatalities a year. But losing Daw was different. They'd been running this drive for nearly 11 years. They had a retirement plan. They'd leave this crap hole of a system, find a planet to live on. And now, poof, just like Cassie, they got careless, and the whole thing got flattened. And if the pirates were on the Coleridge and comms were down, the rest of the crew were probably dead too. Zen wondered if he really was the only one still alive. When he checked his right side, it was sticky with clotted blood. Stiff, sore, but he hadn't bled out. Lucky day. His hands hurt. His everything hurt. With trembling fingers, he tapped Gopher 7's cracked interface, trying to get an idea of what happened, of how much trouble he was in. He wasn't dead yet, and if there was a chance of making it out, he damn well was going to take it. Find a way to mourn the others properly. And maybe, just maybe, a spark of anger warmed his heart. Parts of the ship reported no atmosphere, so the hull was breached. The engine was gone, shredded by the cannons. The cargo rail was missing. He figured their asteroid haul had given him enough cover to avoid getting slagged entirely. Small mercy. He was stranded, but maybe he could do something unconventional with the maneuvering pylons, if any survived. And his radio still worked. That was good. But he was also deep in the Canner belt, so it was unlikely anyone would be able to hear him. Floating through the belt and out the other side was about his only option. A couple weeks, if he was lucky and didn't collide with a rock. Then he could signal for help, and maybe in another couple of weeks, someone would pick him up. If he stretched his supplies, he had the food to survive that long. But the cannons had also clipped Gopher 7's water tanks, so all he had left was what was already in the pipes, maybe a day's worth. Zen sat back in his chair, groaned, and stared out at the Canor belt all around him. An ocean of frozen water, as poisonous as the seas of old Earth if not purified. Not something Gopher 7 was equipped for, not something Zen was schooled in. Zen chuckled. "We'll figure it out, or die trying." The Breakfast Murder Club. A hush fell upon the gathering at the large clover-shaped mansion that Lucky the Lucky Charms leprechaun lived in. The guests looked in horror and sadness as they saw the body of the effusive leprechaun floating in the large clover-shaped pool that was located in the courtyard of the luxurious estate. Tony the Tiger, Toucan Sam, Count Chocula, Frankenberry, Buzz the Honey Nut Cheerios Bee, and Snap, Crackle, and Pop all stood silently staring at the corpse. While their first impulse was to consider it an accidental death by drowning, something about the mangled nature of the body didn't add up. Casting even further doubt on the death by drowning theory was the large metal blade protruding from Lucky's back, with blood flowing freely out of the wound and into the pool water. After a long and agonizing silence, Buzz was the first to speak. "Looks like we got ourselves a serial killer on our hands," he giggled. "Buzz, that's not fucking funny," Crackle yelled at the floating bee. We have to figure out who did this. Can we make sure he's really dead? Snap inquired. I mean, we don't know for sure, do we? I don't think he's alive. Toucan Sam flew over the pool to examine the corpse from above. He's not breathing. He flew back to his room and retrieved a large life preserver shaped like a red Fruit Loop, then tossed it into the pool next to Lucky. But there was no movement from the leprechaun. Come on, Lucky. The body still did not stir. He's dead, Tony lamented. But who would want to kill Lucky? Count Chocula asked. Lucky didn't have an enemy in the world. Well, that's not totally true. Pop shook his head. I can think of a few people who would have wanted to do away with Lucky. Like who? Frankenberry asked as he retrieved a pool skimmer and attempted to push Lucky's body toward the side of the pool for retrieval. Well, for starters, how about his children? Lucky had quite an estate and lots of estranged children thanks to his fondness for Irish hookers. Those kids always chasing him in the commercials? They were his own offspring. They were always after his lucky child support payments. Yes, Lucky was loaded, Buzz blurted out. He had it all. Cash, stocks and bonds, Bitcoin and doubloons, pots of gold, Swiss bank accounts, and real estate investment boons. But I didn't see any kids come into this house today, Sam interjected. Or anyone else for that matter. He paused. Let's face it, one of us is the killer. The rest of the mascots stood silent for a moment. Finally, Snap ventured a comment. So, which one of us would have had a motive to kill Lucky? We were all his friends, his most trusted buddies. We've all been through thick and thin together. Whether we work for Kellogg's or General Mills, we've all had the same goal of selling the world's children onto delicious, sugary cereal, so they don't end up with that bland, nutritious oatmeal their parents want them to eat. How could any of us stoop to something like this? Well, there's one mascot here I think could have done this, Sam proposed. He pointed at the Frosted Flakes guru. Tony. He's had it in for the beloved leprechaun for a long time. Hey, I wouldn't kill anybody, Tony protested. Oh, you wouldn't. Frankenberry sneered at the large cartoon tiger. Like you didn't make your displeasure known about Lucky's Asian safaris that you claim are decimating your kind, especially with your criminal history. Remember all those game hunters they found outside your house? Those maulings were expunged from my record. Tony frantically tried to steer the accusations elsewhere. It was probably the Toucanen who did it. That's right, Buzz agreed. Remember, Sam, how you threatened Lucky on social media and you had to put out a public apology before Kellogg's would let you appear in commercials again? Sam leapt to his own defense. Well, he was nasty to me too. He said that Fruit Loops were nothing more than gay Cheerios. He should have been kicked off of Twitter too. He's guilty, Tony exclaimed as the other mascots took a harsh eye to the toucan. Tony, Pop yelled at the tiger. This isn't one of your stupid commercials. Why do you always talk like that? I had a stroke, Tony declared. This is a total witch hunt, Sam screamed. If I killed Lucky, you think I'd just leave his body in the pool for everyone to find? I'm a fucking bird. I could easily take him anywhere to dispose of the evidence. He looked around at his accusers. It was probably Chocula. Lucky had the goods on him, and the Count knew it. The crowd gasped, turning to the chocolatey vampire, who backed away slowly from all of them, except for his ward, Frankenberry. I don't know what you're talking about. I did not do anything. Lucky did not have anything on me. Oh yeah? Sam sneered at the Count. You knew that Lucky knew about your holdings in cocoa production companies operating in West Africa. Lucky knew that you were profiteering from child slave labor, using children to produce the chocolate used in your cereal. He was going to go to the papers about it, and he also knew about your little dalliances with European figures of royalty and your alleged ties to murderous East European strongmen like Vlad the Impaler and Ivan the Terrible. But what really made Lucky decide to come clean with everything he knew about you was a laptop he found in your castle, proving your involvement with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You, sir, have a long and very bloody history, and Lucky was about to blow it all up for the world to see. That is why you killed him. You seriously did all of that? Snap gaped at Chocula. You should take a good hard look in whatever it is you vampires use instead of a mirror. I did not kill Lucky, the Count vigorously declared. And all that stuff is also a lie. Lucky vanted to frame me because I was always his biggest competition for cereals with marshmallows shaped like weird crap in them. I think we need to examine where the three little elves stand with all this, Frankenberry said. Snap, crackle, and pop. Maybe one of you snapped, then another one of you cackled, and then the third of you popped. Okay, what's our motive? Pop asked belligerently. Lucky and us go back many years. Us little guys gotta stick together, you know? Like you never had it in for the little leprechaun who works for your rival company, Buzz buzzed. He always beat you in the little people's competitions at the breakfast conventions. Plus, his cereal always did better with children aged 6 to 18, especially in those from wealthier households. Snap sniffled. Yes, he was our whimsical little rival, but that doesn't mean any of us would kill him. If it was anybody here who did it, it was probably the pink monstrosity standing over there. Frankenberry frowned as the crowd turned in his direction. Me? Screw you, you little elf. I would never kill Lucky. Oh, yeah? Snap asserted. Like you never got into Lucky's face about all the rumors he spread about you, about the name of your cereal meaning it contained genetically modified berries. Frankenberry shook his head sadly. Yeah, I guess it did hit me below the belt when he told people that. My sales went down over 20% because of him. Also, Lucky did sleep with your wife, Chocula added. She said sex with me was like sleeping with a corpse, Frankenberry cried. Well, I can't help that. I'm made of corpses. The hell was she doing with that little Irish runt anyway? His pecker is probably the size of a matchstick. Whoa, I think we best move on, Sam suggested. Wait a minute, we never talked about Buzz. Our flying friend here had a very good motive to off our beloved leprechaun. Okay, I see where this is going, but I am not the killer, Buzz screamed. Yes, Lucky interfered with my efforts to spread awareness of the threat to honeybees. He'd go around saying horrible things about my people, that we're all dangerous, invasive species who sting people for fun. He kept showing everyone that damn Wu-Tang Clan video where the killer bees attack New York. He even tried to convince Michael Bay to produce an action or horror movie called Night of the Bumblebees, all because my cereal beats his among the 18 to 34 female demographic. That's not the only reason, Sam insisted. It's well known in the industry that Lucky also encouraged the worker bees in your hives to unionize. Apparently, work conditions at your company are so bad that many of your employees have jumped ship to work for Amazon and Walmart. I mean, God forbid you provide your employees with full dental. What the hell do my bees need dental for? Buzz countered. They don't even have teeth. Okay, enough, Crackle yelled. This isn't getting us anywhere. It's clear that almost all of us had a motive to kill Lucky, but obviously only one of us actually did it. We have to start looking for clues. We need to check any video surveillance of the pool, examine Lucky's wounds, get an autopsy done, anything that might clue us in on how and when he died, and who was with him when he expired. No sooner did he finish talking than all the lights went out. The courtyard area was suddenly shrouded in darkness, with none of the mascots being able to see anything, despite some of them normally having excellent night vision. Then, only moments later, the lights came back on as quickly as they turned off. Everyone shrieked in horror as they saw Crackle laying on the ground, covered in blood and not moving. "Crackle!" Snap screamed. "Who did this to you?" "The killer has struck again!" Tony exclaimed. "We have to find out who did this," Toucan yelled. "Everyone, follow my nose and stick together." Suddenly, a voice was heard from inside the house. "Ahem, everyone. If you'll turn your attention to me, I think I know the solution to this perplexing mystery." The gathering turned their heads to see the newcomer, Captain Crunch, emerge from the mansion and into the pool yard. "Captain!" Pop cheered. "What are you doing here?" "I came here earlier, saw what happened, and have been investigating the house ever since," the captain chuckled. "I've become quite adept at sleuthing ever since my court-martial from the Navy forced me into early retirement." "So, who was the killer?" Frankenberry asked. "And was it the same person who murdered Crackle just now?" Crunch took a whiff from his pipe. "Just calm down, and I will explain everything. First, here is an explanation of how it might have happened. How it might have happened. Tony did it," the captain announced, pointing at the shocked tiger in a fit of rage. Earlier today, he and Lucky were out by the poolside bar making chit-chat, and the conversation turned to health and nutrition. Tony repeatedly mocked the idea of marshmallows being considered a breakfast food, to which Lucky stated that marshmallows may not be a nutritious food, but that Tony was an endangered species and his mother was a whore. Tony immediately and swiftly murdered Lucky, inserted a knife into the body, and threw it into the pool to cover up the telltale slash wounds, and then bribed Buzz to kill the power using his stinger so that he could make an escape under cover of darkness. But when everyone gathered at the pool instead, Buzz had to sneak away in order to cut the electricity. Tony then took advantage of the darkness to kill Crackle, before the others could start searching, and find out it was him who performed the dastardly deeds. "How dare you! It wasn't me!" Tony exclaimed. "Captain," Buzz belted out, "maybe you should stop with your bullshit detective work and go back to manning those glory holes or whatever else it is you did that got you kicked out of the Navy." Captain Crunch was undeterred. "Those are the facts, I'm afraid. As ugly as they may be, we have a double murderer and an accomplice amongst us right now." "You both are going to jail for this," Snap cried in between shedding tears for his lost companion. "The hell I am," Tony snarled as he bore his fangs belligerently. "You real deed." He leapt up and pounced onto the ground, roaring and throwing his claws aggressively at the other mascots. "You don't want to mess with the eye of this tiger," Buzz declared as he pointed his stinger at the crowd and prepared to dive bomb into them. "'Cause believe me, you won't be a survivor." "Well, this is all a fun little romp," Captain Crunch announced, just as the fracas was about to go into full drive. "But it isn't actually how it happened. How about this? How about this?" "Toucan Sam is the culprit," Captain Crunch proclaimed once the mascots were all at his attention again. Lucky was about to publish a memoir detailing Sam's troubled history as a cocaine addict. Sam was afraid the revelation would cause parents to boycott Fruit Loops and tank sales of his product. so he waited until Lucky was alone in the pool yard, then pecked him to death with that long, fruity beak of his. The rest of the mascots were shocked, but Sam did not attempt to deny the accusation. Well, yes, Lucky did meet his end with me, but aren't you forgetting about your little part in this, oh Captain, my Captain? When Captain Crunch did not respond, Sam was quick to continue. When Captain Crunch arrived at the scene, I knew he would figure things out. So, I blackmailed him into covering up this crime by threatening to reveal to everyone his association with Jeffrey Epstein. So while we were all arguing back here, Crunch cut the power so that I could kill Crackle and take the heat off of myself for long enough to smuggle Lucky's body away from the house. But guess what, Captain? Our deal is off. You weren't supposed to reveal yourself in this manner, and now we're both fucked. I too can. That is so, Captain Crunch proclaimed. There is indeed a lesson in all this. Blackmail and hidden secrets are tempting to use, but are as dangerous to their wielders as they are to their targets. But do not despair, Toucan, for that is also not how it happened. Here is the real solution to this mystery. What really happened? No one killed Lucky, the captain announced. In the interval before his body was discovered by you all, I conducted a thorough examination. Though it may look like foul play, his death was actually caused by drowning as a result of acute alcohol poisoning, brought about by his ethnicity, as well as his despondency over losing yet another child paternity case, this time to a Brooklyn mother of 4. The rest of the serial mascots murmured. But then why was the body still in the pool, with the knife in his back, when we found him? Frankenberry asked. Suddenly Crackle rose to his feet, brushing himself off as he laughed. Thank the captain's cunning for that one. He cackled as Captain Crunch glared at him with eyes wide open. Crackle, what the hell, man? You totally stuck the knife in my back. Give it a rest, Cap. You did that yourself. Crackle started licking up the ketchup he had covered himself with as part of the ruse. After the autopsy, Captain Crunch put the knife in Lucky's back and threw it into the pool to make the scene look like murder, sullying the reputation of the other serial mascots, enough to make people forget about his court-martial, which was hurting sales of Crunch Berries. I was in on the scheme as well, because he promised to help me convince the bigwigs at Kellogg's to bring back Rice Krispie Treats cereal, which we all know was the bomb. So I faked my death in order to make it look like a double homicide and allow Captain to declare himself a hero for solving the mystery. Plus, it would have allowed me to cash in on a very lucrative life insurance policy once I resurfaced under the brand name Rice Titties, the world's first pornographic cereal. Then why did you just blow it all right now? The captain seethed. You and I were gonna be rich beyond our wildest dreams. I had second thoughts lying down here just now. I realized that no one really wants boobs in their breakfast cereal. Crackle shrugged. So sue me. The rest of the mascots simply stood in silence for a moment. Captain Crunch decided to slip away quietly, to which no one else took notice. As the evening turned into full-on nighttime, they still stood in the pool yard without making a sound. Well, Buzz finally said, anyone want to go over to the Trix Rabbit's house? He texted me that he just made some brownies that are very much not for kids.